My name is Layla. I am 26 years old. I was born in a small, forgotten town where hope was a luxury we couldn't afford. Life, there was a cycle of struggles. My family was poor, crammed into a tiny house with cracked windows that let the cold in and offered no escape from the noise of our neighbors. We had no hot water, and every meal was a reminder of what we lacked. Each day, I would escape by looking at photos of New York City on my cracked phone screen. I dreamed of living in America. I yearned for financial stability, personal freedom, and beautiful clothes. I craved a completely new existence, and I was willing to do almost anything to get it. I didn't care about the method, I only cared about the result. One day, a clear plan formed in my mind. I needed a green card, the key to my new life. I had heard stories of women who married American men to obtain one. I looked at my reflection and thought, why not me? I considered myself attractive and intelligent enough to pretend to love someone. I was not searching for genuine love. My only goal was the legal paperwork that would set me free. Don't feel guilty, I told myself. This is just a business transaction. I felt no shame, only a steely resolve. I created a convincing but fake profile on an international dating website. I wrote that I was a gentle soul looking for a kind, honest man. I uploaded a few carefully selected photos, ones that made me look sweet and innocent. Within 2 days, my inbox was flooded with messages. However, most of the men were too young, too adventurous, or clearly not well off. I needed someone different. I needed a man who was older, perhaps a bit lonely, someone stable and easy to influence. Then I found David's profile. David was 39. He had kind brown eyes and a smile that seemed shy and genuine. He lived in a quiet suburb in Texas, worked a steady office job, and owned a modest house. He had never been married, had no children, and his profile suggested a quiet life with few close friends. In his main photo, he looked like a genuinely good man. That was exactly what my plan required, a good man who wouldn't be suspicious. I crafted my first message carefully. Hi, David. You have a very kind face. I love your smile. He replied almost instantly. Hi, Layla. Thank you so much. You are incredibly beautiful. And just like that, our calculated courtship began. We talked every single day from morning until late at night. I painted a picture of a perfect woman for him. I claimed I was a primary school teacher. I told him my hobbies were cooking and reading classic novels. I said I longed for a simple, quiet life. They were all lies, woven together to create a character he would fall in love with. David was everything I expected, gentle, attentive, and trusting. He asked about my fabricated day. He called me sweet, affectionate names. After just 2 weeks of constant communication, he confessed, I'm starting to feel something very special for you. I smiled at my phone screen. Me too, I typed back, the lie coming effortlessly. I think I'm falling in love with you, he said 1 month into our conversations. Perfect. My plan was unfolding flawlessly. I replied, I love you too, David. His happiness was palpable even through the screen. Come to America, he urged. Let's start our life together. Let's get married. I pretended to be hesitant, acting shy. Is it too soon? I asked, while inside my heart pounded with victory. My plan was working better than I could have imagined. David, completely smitten, paid for my flight and sent money to cover my visa application fees. I bought a new dress and packed my single suitcase. Before I left, I told my mother, I'm moving to the United States. She looked at me with worried eyes. Do you truly love this man? I avoided her gaze and said, he is a kind man, that's enough for me. But in truth, his kindness was just a tool for my ambition. I just wanted to escape. When I landed in America, David was waiting at the arrival's gate. He was holding a small, handmade sign with my name on it. He wore a neatly ironed shirt and held a bouquet of flowers. "You look even more beautiful in person," he said, his voice filled with emotion. I gave him a warm hug, a performance I had rehearsed in my mind. I smiled at him, but it was a smile that never reached my eyes. It was just another part of the plan. We drove to his house. It was small but immaculate. He made me a cup of tea and spoke nervously about his job and his neighborhood. I scanned the room, noting the large television and the comfortable new sofa. This was a significant upgrade from my old life. "You can take the bedroom," he offered kindly. "I'll sleep on the couch." I shook my head, playing my role. "No, we are going to be husband and wife." That night, I let him hold me. I closed my eyes and pictured my green card. We were married 2 weeks later in a simple courthouse ceremony. There was no big celebration, no family, just the two of us and a colleague from his office who acted as a witness. I wore an inexpensive white dress I had ordered online. He teared up a little as he said his vows. I just watched the second hand on the wall clock, counting the minutes. Immediately after the wedding, he diligently helped me begin the green card application process. We took staged photos, filled out endless stacks of paperwork, and prepared for the immigration interview. In public, I held his hand and called him my love. In front of the immigration officer, I kissed his cheek and declared, "I want to build a life with this wonderful man." I looked deep into his trusting eyes and smiled. He believed every single word. At home, David did everything he could to make me happy. He cooked my favorite meals. He bought me thoughtful little gifts. He asked me about my dreams for the future. "I want to study," I told him. "I want to get a job. I want to build a future here." He beamed with pride. "I will support you in any way I can," he promised. He had no idea that the future I envisioned didn't include him. I just wanted a future in his country. As time went on, I started to change. I became more confident and independent. I started going out more, making new friends. I stopped making dinner for him. I stopped asking about his day. When he'd ask where I was going, I'd say I was tired and needed some space. Sometimes I stayed out very late. A few times I didn't come home at all. He would ask, "Where were you last night?" "Out with friends," I'd reply coldly, looking him straight in the eye as I lied. He looked hurt and confused, but he never pushed further. David was not a bad man. He was a good man who simply wanted to be loved. But I was not the woman who could give him that love. I was not his dream. I was his user, and I felt no remorse. I kept repeating my mantra, "This is just a necessary step." One day at the gym, I met another man. His name was Mason. He was young, muscular, and radiated a confidence that I found exciting. We started talking, and soon we were meeting in secret. I told him I was single, living with a roommate. He didn't ask too many questions, and I certainly didn't offer any truths. David began to notice the growing distance between us. "You're always gone," he said one evening, his voice laced with sadness. "You don't talk to me anymore." I glanced at him, annoyed. "I'm busy building my new life." He didn't argue, he just looked defeated. The day the letter from immigration arrived, I was home alone. David came home from work and brought the mail in. "I think this is it," he said, handing me the official-looking envelope with a hopeful smile. I opened it with steady hands. My heart began to pound. I scanned the letter until I saw the word, approved. I wanted to shout with joy, but I contained myself and managed a small smile. "Thank you, David," I said, my voice flat. He looked so proud. "We did it, my love." I gave him a quick peck on the cheek and walked into the kitchen. I poured a cup of coffee and stared out the window at my new American life. That night I went out and did not come home. I stayed with Mason at his small downtown apartment. He was fun and carefree. He made me laugh and played loud music. Being with him felt like the freedom I had been chasing. I told him I was staying with a friend temporarily and had no family in the country. It was a web of lies, but I didn't care. I had a husband, but he was no longer useful to me. The next morning, I returned to David's house. The smell of coffee and bacon filled the air. He was at the stove making breakfast. He looked tired but managed a weak smile. "Where were you?" he asked gently. I sat at the kitchen table. "I stayed at a friend's house," I said. "I was too tired to drive back." He looked at me for a long moment. "You didn't answer any of my texts." I smiled dismissively. My phone died. "I forgot my charger." He said nothing else. We ate our breakfast in a heavy silence. He asked if I wanted to go for a walk in the park later. I told him I was busy. I went to the bedroom and shut the door, immediately texting Mason. I didn't want to spend another minute with David, but I knew I had to be careful for just a little longer. A few days later, my physical green card arrived in the mail. It came in a plain white envelope. I opened it slowly. And there it was, my ticket to freedom. My permanent resident card. I wanted to jump and scream. I held the plastic card in my hand, tracing my name on it. I couldn't stop smiling. David saw me and his face lit up. "You finally got it," he said. "We did it." "Yes," I answered. "I did it." He didn't catch the correction. He had no idea I was already mentally packing my bags. That evening, David prepared a special celebration dinner. He roasted a chicken and made creamy mashed potatoes. He lit candles on the dining table and put on quiet, romantic music. "Tonight is a special night," he said, raising his glass. "Now we can finally begin our real life together." I smiled and clinked my glass against his. "Yes, we can," I lied. After dinner, I went to take a shower. I stared at my reflection in the steamy mirror. My skin looked healthy, my eyes were bright. I whispered to my reflection, "You did it, Layla." I felt a surge of pride. I was so close to being completely free. The next day, I began working at a local salon. It was a simple job, washing hair and sweeping floors, but it was my own money. I told my coworkers I was single and new to the area. I kept David a complete secret. He was a chapter of my life I was ready to erase. That night, I met Mason at a bar. He kissed me and called me beautiful. I laughed, feeling a genuine spark of happiness. "I'm so happy now," I told him. He was interested in my present, not my past, which suited me perfectly. When I arrived home late, David was asleep on the couch with the television still murmuring. A blanket was pulled up to his chin. I paused and looked at his sleeping face. He looked so peaceful and kind. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of something, but I pushed it away. It was probably just pity. I turned off the light and went to our bedroom alone. 2 days later, while David was at work, I packed my suitcase. I gathered my clothes, my makeup, and my precious green card. I took off the simple wedding band he had given me and left it on the kitchen counter. I didn't write a note. I didn't make a phone call. I simply vanished from his life. I moved into a small room I rented from a girl at the salon. I paid her with the money I had been secretly saving. She was just happy to have help with the rent and didn't pry into my life. The first thing I did was block David's number. I couldn't bear the thought of hearing his voice, of hearing him cry or ask me why. I knew he would be devastated, but I told myself it wasn't my problem. He had served his purpose. His part in my story was over. Weeks turned into months. My new life began to take shape. I got a better job at a more upscale salon and started earning good money. I bought fashionable clothes. I went to parties and met new people. I smiled a lot, but on the inside, I felt a persistent coldness. Mason eventually faded away, finding a new girl to entertain him. It didn't bother me. I hadn't loved him either. He was just a pleasant distraction. One night I was sitting in my small, neat room. I looked at my green card, which I kept in a box on my desk. This card was the symbol of my new life. But as I held it, I didn't know what to do next. I had no real friends who truly knew my story. I had no one to call when I felt lonely, no one to share a secret with. I had the legal status, the money, the freedom. But something vital was missing. I didn't know what it was. Then I repeated the old words to myself. You did what you had to do, you have to be strong. I put the card back in its box and turned off the light. My life after David was profoundly quiet. I worked, I came home, I watched TV, I ate alone. I told myself this was the independent life I had always craved. I was free. I had my green card. I had accomplished my mission. But a strange emptiness began to settle in my heart. My phone was always silent. The bustling city outside my window only highlighted the silence inside my room. I didn't laugh often. I never cried. I just felt numb. At work, I was professional but distant. When my coworkers asked about my weekend, I would just say, it was fine. They never knew about David, about the man whose heart I had broken to get here. That part of my life felt like a movie I had watched about someone else. One evening, I saw a couple walking down the street, holding hands and laughing. The man leaned down and kissed the woman's forehead. They looked so genuinely happy. I felt a sharp pang in my chest and quickly looked away. I hurried to the bus stop, my heart beating fast. In the cold evening air, I thought of David. I remembered how he looked at me with those soft, kind eyes. Even when I was cruel to him, he was gentle. I tried to push the memory away, but it kept returning. I remembered the celebratory dinner he made. He had been so full of hope for our future. I had felt nothing but impatience to leave. One day, while cleaning my room, I opened the box and saw the green card again. I picked it up. It felt heavy in my hand. It represented my success, but it was also a monument to my lies, my deceit, and my cruelty to a person who had only shown me kindness. My heart felt heavy. I put it back and shut the drawer. That weekend, I went to a park by myself. It was a beautiful, sunny day. I watched families playing, a father teaching his son to ride a bicycle, a young woman reading a book under a tree. I sat on a bench, completely alone. I had my life in America, but I had no one to share it with. I felt small and invisible. I wondered about David. Was he okay? Did he hate me? Had he found someone new, someone who would love him for real? That night, an impulse I couldn't control made me search his name on social media. I found his profile. He looked different, thinner. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore, but he still had a gentle look about him. I stared at his picture for a long time before closing the browser. The next day, I tried to focus on the positive. You are lucky, I told myself. You have a new life, a good job, a future. But a quiet voice in my soul whispered back, you destroyed a good person to get here. You hurt someone who gave you his whole heart. I started writing in a journal, not about my day, but about my past. I wrote about David, about our first conversation, about meeting him at the airport. I wrote about every lie I told him, especially the day I said, I love you. I wrote about how he smiled when he brought me flowers. I wrote about the silence in the house after I walked out without a word. After writing for hours, I sat in silence. I felt a shift inside me. It wasn't happiness or sadness. It was the crushing weight of the truth. For the first time, I was completely honest with myself. Weeks passed. I continued to work and save money. I bought a small dining table with 2 chairs, but the second chair remained empty. I started drinking coffee every morning just to feel some warmth. I thought about calling David, about just saying I was sorry, but I never found the courage. One night, I had a dream about him. We were back in his kitchen. He was cooking and laughing. I was sitting at the table watching him. He turned to me and said, "I always knew you didn't love me, Layla, but I loved you enough for both of us." I woke up with a start, my face wet with tears. I had been crying in my sleep. I went to the bathroom and looked at my reflection. I looked older. My eyes seemed tired. I was no longer that ambitious young girl who had arrived in America full of schemes. I was a different person now, someone shaped by my own selfish choices. I went back to bed and closed my eyes. I thought maybe one day I will find real love. Maybe I will meet someone who can see the good in me. Maybe I can become a better person. I didn't know the answers, but for tonight I would just rest. I would stop running from my past, and in the morning I would try to start again, for real this time.